Hello, my friends. We are here tonight with Tracy Poizner. Is that how you say it? I've only ever read it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Tracy is the founder of the group The Spectacular Stepmom. She's going to tell us a lot about what she does tonight. I'm really excited to have her here. And after some technical difficulties, we finally got this to work. So we're very happy about that.
We've been completely alienated from Facebook and from each
I
other,
know, I
actually.
know. The funny thing is we tried to do a live video together about a year ago and had the same issue. And this time I was like, we're good to go, but not.
But not.
So Tracy, will you tell us a little bit about yourself to start out?
Sure. I am both a mom and a stepmom. I've been a mom for a long time. Let's just say my daughter would probably not be very happy if I was broadcasting her age online.
Uh-huh.
I married my second husband 5 years ago, although we've been together for about 13 years. So
Okay.
I've been a stepmom in some capacity or
Mhm.
other for that long. And when we first got together, his kids were quite little, 6, 8, and 10 or 11,
Oh
as I
yeah.
recall. And they lived all the time with their mom, quite far away, about 3 hours drive.
Hmm.
So I had zero expectation of having anything to do with them beyond occasional weekends and,
Right.
maybe holidays or something. But my husband was in the habit of going there every weekend. So he drove to see them every single weekend. And
Wow.
once in a blue moon, they would come here.
Hmm.
And I had no sense that would ever change until it did. And they
Uh-huh.
all came here one at a time, eventually to live. So my husband and I joke that we've been like the serial parents of an only child 4 times in a row.
That's so funny. My oldest stepdaughter came to live with us about a year ago and she turned 18
Oh,
or she
nice.
just turned 18. So it's been kind of the serial only parent kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
I understand that. That's
yeah.
interesting. So what was your relationship like, or what was your husband's relationship like with the mom during that time?
Um, well, pretty, um, how can I say, almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, quite difficult.
Okay.
Quite difficult. Um, and uh, well, the thing about let me just say the type of alienation that my husband experienced was not the kind where you don't get to have any contact at all.
Uh-huh.
It was the kind that people often confuse, I think, with loyalty bind or
Okay.
loyalty conflict,
Mm-hmm.
where um, the kids are being consistently primed to disrespect the dad, to not want to go there, to hearing bad things about him or about
Right.
me or whatever. So the what he experienced was, because he was a very, very hands-on kind of dad when the
Mm-hmm.
kids were little, and so he was used to phoning every day. He
Okay.
phoned every day when they were
Mm-hmm.
even, well, I should just preface by saying that we were roommates for a number of years before we ever got together. So
Uh-huh.
when I first met him, his kids were very little indeed, and he was phoning home twice every day, like
Oh,
morning and evening.
wow. Uh-huh.
So after they separated after a number of years, and they were, getting older at that point. So like I said, they were 6, 7, and 10, 6, 8, and 11, something like that. And he would call every evening, and he would call, and this was back in the days when you had a house telephone, right? That
Right.
doesn't exist anymore. Um, And he would call and the phone would ring and ring and ring and ring and ring until it went to the answering machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would call back again and it would ring and ring and ring and ring and go to the answering machine. And then he would call a third time and finally somebody would pick up the phone. And that happened every single night for, I don't know how many years, 3, 4, 5 years.
Uh-huh. Did you ever get confirmation from the kids that mom was telling them, hey, don't pick up the phone if it's your dad?
Yes. Oh, yeah. 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 And I mean, they feel really bad about it now.
Right.
They do. But at the time it was a game and it was what you had to do. And they really also, really believed in her. And they believed that it was right, that what was happening was right. So, that was really tough. And then of course it was also accompanied by, as I said, he would go there every weekend. Mm-hmm. And he would knock at the door and knock and knock and knock and nobody would come. And he would ring the doorbell and nobody would come. So, it's a long, long game of, superhuman patience.
Yeah.
To get to the end of that. And I recently heard a really lovely story in my Facebook group. Maybe it was on another one, I don't remember, but someone just said that their stepdaughter was coming for the summer holidays and that this was such a big deal because dad hadn't seen her in 3 years. And he was phoning every day and mom was not picking up the phone. He called every day for more than 3 years. And then one day she picked up the phone.
Wow.
Imagine after 3 years of no answer.
Yeah.
She picked up the phone and the girl got to talk. And then the next thing he knew, she was allowed to see him. And he went to the other town and saw his daughter and she announced that she wanted to come for a weekend.
Wow.
And then she got to come for the summer holidays or something. Like, it was incredible. So when you're in the middle of it, it's a bit like, being on an ocean liner, going from one continent to another, and you sort of look out the window every day and the landscape is the same. You can't perceive at all from inside what kind of progress you're making.
Right. I think that's really important to hear.
You can't tell that you're, 3 weeks away from the end, or 2 days away from the end, or a year away from the end. You just never know. But I read another, actually I think it was the same poster, and I'm sorry if I'm telling someone else's story here who's watching, but it was such a beautiful story. She said that her own father had given up after 4 or 5 years of her not responding, and that it broke her heart when he gave up.
Yeah.
So even like what you don't know as the parent who is reaching out seemingly into the void is that the child is aware that you are there in the background being ignored, and you're holding up your end.
Right.
And that's really important.
Which I think is also really tricky too, because I've seen a lot of groups and stepmoms and dads getting discouraged because they can't see the kids and frustrated.
How can you not get discouraged?
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. And there's nothing good to say about it. But I think that, this is one of the worst things that can happen. It's the worst kind of punishment that a person could inflict, and that's why it happens.
Yeah.
And it happens because the controlling parent is sort of blinded by their need to exercise some kind of control and to inflict a punishment, to win something. And I think what those people don't understand is that it always comes out badly. in the end for the parent who does that to their child.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about that, because I haven't dealt with parental alienation personally in our case. And I also haven't been step-parent coaching for long enough to see some of these things turn out for the better. What kinds of things have you seen that have helped in parental alienation cases besides persistence?
Yeah, it's mostly time.
Okay.
It's mostly, I would say, um, time and understanding that what the kids need is to be able to love both of their parents at the same time. Not to love mom at mom's house and to love dad at dad's house, because then the kids are cut in half 100% of the time. 100% of the time. They're never okay. They're missing someone every minute of every day.
Right.
And that takes an incredible toll. So as a stepmother, I believe that we're really uniquely positioned to be that place where the child can love both parents at the same time. It's hard for people who have divorced to sort of suck it up and feign interest in what's going on at mom's house, or pretend to be happy about the things that she's doing that you're really not happy about.
Right.
But it should be easier for the stepmom to do that, because you don't have all the history with this person who makes you not want to entertain that anything good could be happening there.
Yeah.
So that's really important. But the thing about how it turns out, I did a little survey online. I went into a bunch of stepmom groups that I participate in, and I asked, who here was ever alienated as a child from one of your parents? And I got hundreds of responses. The truth is, it's like shockingly common, like more than 50% actually of divorces include some degree of parental alienation. So it's huge amounts. But I did an interview with a woman in my group at one point, because I did a little video series about parental alienation, and I randomly met a woman who lives in my town actually, who had been quite completely alienated from her mother, which is kind of unusual. She was one when her parents separated, divorced, and her dad went to court and got custody of all the three kids by essentially, lying in court and destroying the mother's reputation, whatever. And he got custody of all the kids, and he always told them growing up that, your mom is a dangerous person, and if you ever see her on the street, you should run away. And then something happened when she was 7 and her sisters were older, and they discovered that she was living just a few streets away. And so they did go to meet her, and the dad said, well, you have to pick. Like, you can never see your mother again. If you want to live here with me, you can never see her again, or go away right now and live with her. So, this woman told me her whole story of how that went. And it really matched what I heard from all those people who replied to my survey. Like 95% of them said, now I have a much better relationship with the parent who I didn't see for a long time.
Yeah.
And I have, a strained or non-existent relationship with the parent who was alienating me. So that's the reality of what happens at the end of that story. There are adults around, lots and lots of them, who can tell us how it is for them now compared to how it was when they were growing up. And that is almost everybody chooses on the side of a parent who they didn't get to see, who they were kept away from. And they resent the parent who did that to them.
Okay, Tracy, as you're telling me this, I'm getting chill because I feel like so many, like we talked about, so many stepmoms, so many dads get so discouraged, but it really is kind of a long game that you have to be
It's
in.
such a long game.
And it's hard to be patient and it's hard to have people telling you those things, but there's hope, and not just hope, but evidence that things will get better.
Yeah. So this is where you have to like completely bust out all the self-care in the world, you know, and support and self-care. And of course, as a, you know, you're probably functioning as the partner of the person who is really the victim of this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about whatever you can do to support your partner through this kind of anguish.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really what it is. So I can tell you, my husband took up meditation.
Uh-huh.
That really helped him a lot. He's a very devoted meditator. And I think that made a big difference for him in being able to get to the end, so to speak. But that was the impetus for me in starting my work with stepmoms. Mm-hmm. was that so we first had his oldest son here. He came when he was 14. He stayed for about 6 months and then decided that he would rather go back. And so he went back and lived with his mom. That was really, really hard for my husband at the time. And then after another about 2 years, then the middle boy came. Mm-hmm. He was 13 when he arrived, and he stayed all the way through high school and then went off to university, and that's where he is now. Uh-huh. And just when he left for university, a couple of months later, then his sister came, the youngest one came to stay with us. And she's been here until now, and she's also at university now.
Okay.
So like when they were all finally here, mm-hmm. And the oldest boy has been living on his own for a long time now. It just, I say that I woke up one day and I felt like I was standing in the light at the end of the tunnel.
I bet.
It was like, holy cow. Like it actually worked out. Like they're all here. Yeah. And I just felt that, through all that we had been through, I had probably, developed a skill set that I could be sharing with people. Mm-hmm. It's probably important to say that in my working life, I practice holistic medicine. That's what I do in the daytime. Uh-huh. So I had a lot of learning behind me and case taking experience, seeing clients in my office. Mm-hmm. And helping people with emotional issues. And I had been specializing in children's behavior issues. So I had a lot of professional skills to draw on to help us through this difficult situation. So I was definitely lucky from that point of view. But I felt like I had really learned some very fundamental things about family dynamics and step families, and I wanted to be able to share that.
Yeah, I love that you do that, and I love kind of the background. We've talked about this before. I have a background as a school psychologist, and so a lot of the same like emotional regulation issues, working with kids, understanding developmental stages, and I feel like as a stepmom that really helps, but not everybody has that. But I know you share that a lot in your group. So can you talk about how you do that?
I guess the how, I do a live video every week, and I generally choose a topic that's something that people are talking about or that they've expressed interest in. But something that I studied quite a lot, which I just find completely fascinating, is called family constellation therapy.
Uh-huh.
And I love talking about it. It's such a weird and interesting thing, but that really helped me to understand that every person has an energetic connection to all the people in their family and to all of their ancestors, so to speak, whether they know them or not. And that there's a hierarchy of relationships that it really helped me to understand the step family dynamic. So in a regular traditional nuclear family, let's say, the relationship of the parents exists before the children are born.
Mm-hmm.
And so the relationship of mother and father has a natural hierarchy that comes before the relationship of the parent to child. And it doesn't mean that it's like more important, but it was there first. And
Right.
so there's a hierarchy that is respected, and that when it's respected, everything flows naturally. The parents are a unit together, and and the kids are well to the degree that unit is okay. That those people are okay with each other. And in a second marriage, in the case of stepmoms, the father and child were a relationship before the stepmom came along.
Yeah.
And that interrupts our idea that the marriage comes first and the kids come later or whatever. Like, yes, of course it does, but there is a difference here, because there's something that needs to be respected in terms of a hierarchy of relationships, because the biological parent and his kids had a relationship before the new wife, the stepmom, came along. So this is, the fact that there are so many millions of families in this situation now, this is a brand new thing in society. We've never, ever had to deal with this before. There's never been a society that had kids living in two households with essentially warring parents, so we're all pioneers. We're all trying to figure out how to do this, because it's something really new. Like, how do we respect that dynamic hierarchy of a relationship between the parent and the child, when the marriage is supposed to be the core of the family? And it's a challenge. But what I suggest is that we have to always respect the part of the family that was there before you came along. So their family belongs to them, and your job as a stepmom is not to try to, keep butting your head against that invisible wall and trying to get in.
Yeah.
A better strategy is to build a new family with your partner, and that you invite the children to, let's say energetically, to be a part of that family. You don't invite them with an invitation, but you make space for them to join this new family that you're making. And we do that in a lot of ways with with new rituals and routines and experiences, and family building exercises of all different kinds. But that seems to work much better for people than trying to force a family feeling of all of you together. That the kids are they're going to appreciate you much more for your willingness to give space to their own family. They're going to appreciate you for that, because that's what they need. They need connection with their dad to feel okay. And what they also need from you is the space to love their mom at the same time while they're at dad's house. That's hard to do.
It is. I think it requires a lot of emotional maturity, which from what I've seen is something that a lot of people struggle with because we're never taught how to do it. How do you work with your clients to help them in that way?
To have more emotional maturity?
Yeah.
I think it's all about just being able to have a perspective and a context for understanding things. So, I just, for example, I tell a lot of stories. I make a lot of analogies.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my stories is about, trying to imagine, I had a client in my own practice who was someone that was working in an atmosphere where, he got a kind of promotion and then ended up taking on new responsibilities while still having the old responsibilities. And this led to a situation where he had two bosses and he had to report. He had to report to two different people who, in their own way, had a different agenda for what was supposed to happen within his company. They were competing for resources for their department. They were competing for kind of internal promotions. And this guy was completely stuck in the middle, that unable to please anyone.
Right.
And I thought that was a pretty good analogy. I likened it to imagine that you go to work, and at the end of every week, you have to pack up your whole office into a little suitcase, and you go to another office on Monday. And there's a new boss there, and there are other coworkers there, and your roles and responsibilities are different. And you work there for a week, and then you pack up and you go back to the other place. And you go back and forth every week. And wherever you are, you've forgotten something at the other office that you need. And wherever you are, there are, things that happen differently, and you forget to do them. And you feel bad when you forget. And sometimes you get yelled at by the boss when you forget.
Right.
And you are trying to please these two bosses who are each kind of from time to time throwing you under the bus because they are competing with each other for something. And it means that whatever you do to further the interests of one team and boss are somehow against the interests of the other team.
Yeah.
And this is crazy making. So if you think about it, that you're working in a place like that, okay, you would eventually quit a job like that. But this is a job, that you can never quit because there's no other job for you ever. So I think that gives us a feeling of how hard it could be to be in that situation, and what a lot of the, seemingly obnoxious behavior is driven by this kind of desperate life situation. Nobody asked for this.
Right. And I love that about that analogy too, just thinking as adults, we have some control over our work life. But as kids, they were just put into this situation and they didn't choose it. They certainly wouldn't have chosen it for the most part. And it's a really difficult situation for them to be in.
Yeah. I think that as adults, we have recourse to all of our adult tools for helping ourselves in difficult situations. And kids have got no tools to help themselves. Nothing is really safe for them in terms of how they express their emotions, their displeasure. The transition times, everybody complains about transition times and how difficult it is. Well, yeah, of course it is. And it's not about you, and you're the grown up. You can put all kinds of things in place to help transition times go more smoothly. How often do you see somebody, like a woman going through the grocery store at 5:30 in the evening with a like screaming toddler or preschooler or something. And you think, lady, like, what is wrong with you? Who would take a kid shopping when they're already hungry? Well, we do these things to ourselves, right? Like we're not always thinking ahead and planning for how to make things go smoothly. It's on us to put things in place for the kids to help things go better.
And I think having someone to tell you that and someone to kind of mentor you along the way is extremely helpful, because I know I wasn't very emotionally mature when I married my husband 12 years ago. I didn't know what I was getting into, like none of us do. It's been just really good, quick transition. We have about 7.5 minutes left in the Zoom meeting. Do you want to talk about some of the resources that you have available to help stepmoms with some of these things?
Sure. So I have a group, which you already mentioned, called the Spectacular Stepmom. And when I started that group, I kind of trolled the other groups looking for women who were giving really, really good advice. And I invited them all to come to my group. So my group is full of women who give really good advice. And and I make everybody watch a little welcome video where they learn how to post, how to comment, without saying things like you knew what you were signing up for, because that's no.
Yeah.
And really, I'm just so proud of what this group has become. It is a real, true support group, and just support and no slagging. People don't have to say, please be kind in their posts, because we all know that, it's just a positive place. I have a website called essentialstepmom.com with my blog there. And I just started a podcast, and I listened to your podcast, Sarah, and it was wonderful. Yeah,
I love yours still. Thank you.
So the podcast is also called the Essential Stepmom Podcast. I have some courses that I've developed. I have a group coaching program, which is called Stepmom Success Lab, that involves some pre-recorded modules, and then also some live Zoom videos like what we're doing now, where the women come with their with the actual stuff that's happening in their home, and we, as we work through the modules, learning about bonding with the kids, learning about how to do discipline of step kids, about how to deal with the bio mom, about how to how to be more appreciated and valued, how to bond and blend into the family. Then we can work in these Zoom sessions with how it actually works to implement that in real time in your household. So that's available too.
Which I think is pretty amazing. And I also think if you get the chance to coach with Tracy or do some mentoring with her, do it. I haven't yet. I've watched and kind of hung out from the sidelines. And I've just been super impressed with your approach on things and how you talk to stepmoms, how you help them, make them feel heard, and also help them, give them tips. So I love that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to look up your podcast on my phone, but it's not working. But I can show it. But definitely check that out too, because
it's available pretty much anywhere. You can get it on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, Spotify, all those places.
Awesome.
The Essential Stepmom Podcast. So I have 6 episodes up at the moment, and I release a new episode every Tuesday.
Awesome. That's good to know. Okay, well, Tracy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on with me tonight and giving hope to some stepmoms who are struggling with parental alienation situations.
This was a great pleasure for me. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. I hope you have a good night. And
okay, you too.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.